born in Joplin, Missouri.
I was born in Minneapolis in May 9th, 1945, again the day after the Germans surrendered in World War II. My dad was the pusher, where he would push us for things, and my mom was my, I don't know what you call it, but she was my stable part. And my dad pushed me to go to college.
I think they met in high school. They went to different high schools, though. And a little bit about my dad. He was ranked real high as a welterweight boxer. And I think he was a contender in Europe during the war. And my mom was runner-up for the Minneapolis Aquatennial Queen. Shadow boxing, well, that's where you're like in front of a mirror and you're practicing boxing.
Shadow boxing. Gary and Danny were screwing around shadow boxing. My dad was real serious about it. And all of a sudden I'm jumping up and down, you know, like this, and all of a sudden, bam, in the head like that. He said, "Your shadow got you." So he pushed us. We could not go out into the ring unless we had been prepared. Sports, and
you're very good at wrestling.
Yeah, I switched from basketball to wrestling, and it went skyrocketed from there. I really enjoyed that.
Sports, water skiing. I had won several tournaments in boys jumping, and I was the youngest kite flyer in the world. I always thought medicine. I had done about 100 autopsies. I think it was my first 2 years at the university. I became what they call a diener in the morgue at the University of Minnesota Hospital. And I was lucky enough to meet some pretty famous doctors, Dr. Baker, Dr. Lilly. I just met Nigerian for just a little bit, but the other doctors I would see a lot. And there were quite a Dr. Stone, I think his name was, and Dr. Brown, also, can't think of his name because he tutored me a lot, Bernie Statlin, Dr. Bernie Statlin.
I always liked having my summers off and the holidays that came, so I was gearing myself to be a teacher.
Always had the desire to do it, and it was in high school. So that would have been the late 50s, middle 50s to late. Just on my own, just decided I was going to do it. And from water skiing, I met Dick Clark and people like that, and that encouraged me. At that time, there were 5 of us.
Part of it was Danny decided, instead of being a fish out in the sea, that we are going to be a whale in Minnesota. And so at that time, we were really well known, and it was like being a big celebrity where you could walk into a restaurant, and if it was crowded, they would say, "Nope, we're going to seat you," and stuff like that. And people got to know you, and I met a lot of contacts from that. That helped me do what I wanted to do. I joined the band because my brother, he would sneak me into the nightclubs, and I saw how many people there were and stuff like that, and then he allowed me to be the band boy, which probably allowing, I don't know, it was $5 a night. They'd chucking all the equipment here and there and stuff like that. But then he also started teaching me to get the beat, because I never could do any of the beats and all that stuff. And then I think it was St. Olaf where he put me on stage, and I all of a sudden was able to follow the drummer with the beats. I think I got good, or I was real weird, and the newspapers would always put articles between Danny and me showing that I'm weird and he's not. And so I started dressing. I always was, the Stones always influenced me, and Brian Jones was always the weird one of the Stones. So I kept looking for hats, I think. And then all of a sudden I came across this World War I flying helmet, and I think that's, you know, and weird clothes. Well, what I learned, and I regret to this day, is the groups we played with, I never asked them for their autograph, and I would have loved to have gotten Rod Stewart's and Joe Cocker's and Janis Joplin's autograph. And I thought, because of the way we were, and we didn't really like to do autographs and stuff like that, that it would be an infringement on them. And now I regret that to the day.
Most of the icons, I suppose, from Hendrix to the Doors, Joplin. So I invited her and the band to Times Square, which I own that bar, and because we were the supporting act on the show with Crow, and they showed up and played to the public until about 3 in the morning. And I opened up what is known now as First Avenue. We had it as a depot, and I had it a little bit into First Avenue. Actually, if I remember right, the First Avenue was really the side of what is known as First Avenue. It was an entranceway. And we opened up with a group. David Zimmerman was our manager agent, and David is Bob Dylan's brother. So that helped us get on a lot of national shows and colleges. There was a period of time that many of your acts, except for the icons, and I use that word icons, played the Midwest because there were more junior colleges, they said, in the Midwest. And that's why some of the artists like Kenny Rogers, Hall & Oates, and that would spend several hundred days a year playing the college scene here. And there was many groups that did it. But we were on the show when in Hayward, Wisconsin, when Journey was starting. I think it was Journey. I think Chicago. Like I said to you off the record, we played with so many it's hard remembering exactly where we played, but we met Jim Morrison and became friends, and we were the kind of friends that out of sight, out of mind. But when we would be in LA, at that time we met, Mickey and I met Jim at the London Fog, which was where they were playing. And then later, we re-saw him again when they were throwing him out at the Whiskey A Go-Go for either being drunk or whatever it was on stage. And then in 1999, I became a voting member of the Grammys because of the records I was associated with. And so we had a pretty good career. There are pictures where you'll see Johnny Winters with us. I didn't see the ones that were taken, but I know they exist, of Pat Paulson and the Smothers Brothers from, I think it was Laugh-In, or maybe it was the Smothers Brothers show. But with Frank Zappa, we met him, and I thought he was at Pandora's Box on Sunset Boulevard with the Mothers of Invention. And then later, he went out on his own, and I was part of, that's why I've received a couple gold records of Shake Your Booty and Joe's Garage 1 and 2. And he was on Mercury. I started John Mellencamp as John Cougar, and then John Cougar Mellencamp. I had Rush, Scorpions, and like I said, it just goes on, and it's at the moment when you remember who you're with. But thanks to Mickey, I had a real good career out of music, real good, because he was always there, always backed me, and he was always the person that was a stable force of the group. He knew when it was time for us to move on from the original reasons, for whatever was the reason, to Chuck Edwards, Ross Ingram, Carl Bradley, Jimmy Lawrence, and then we went forward with that. Jimmy and Carl opened the doors because a new era was coming where it was mixed music, R&B that had a rock and roll feel, and Carl and Jimmy were good at that. Mickey was very good at the show, and the rest, became history. And in 2007, we went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that. So, well, it varied. Let It Ride. Yeah, I got a lot of recognition from all the national groups on Gloria, which was originally done by the Zombies, I think, was it? And I think Van Morrison wrote it. And we got a chance to meet Van Morrison and got ideas from him because he was starting the new thing besides Blood, Sweat, and Tears that I knew well. Well, I shouldn't say I knew him well. I had seen a lot of them through Timothy D. Kerr, that was the national director of Columbia Records. So when I'd be in Hollywood, David Clayton Thomas and that, we'd see him at the Continental Hotel, where Little Richard was always down there, and Little Richard lived in the penthouse of the Continental Hotel on Sunset Boulevard. And that, so it was quite an experience that we both had, Mickey and I. Whiskey A Go-Go, the Direct Line, Minneapolis, we played a lot. New York, we played on, Times Square and that. One year I won Best Showman every year. The very first Connie Awards I won Best Showman, Best Male Singer, and that continued on. There was one year I didn't, that I remember that I didn't win, but we won Best Show Band, I think, that year.
I went to school. I got a wrestling scholarship. I was at the U and going into the band, out of the band, and then I took a wrestling class at the U. And the coach of Concordia was there, and he offered me a scholarship to come to Concordia. And it was a teaching school, and then I started doing some volunteer work and then my student teaching at Summit School in St. Paul, and that gave, that was really a great experience because it was an open type school. From what I've gotten, I've got a lot of awards for teaching. I had the eagle feather ceremony in front of the school board, and there was only 5 other people from Osseo, and the Native American community gave us the eagle feather in the smoke ceremony because of the projects that we did. I got written up in a national Native American magazine, and I wasn't even Native American. And then I've won or got 3 Who's Who Among American Teachers, and those involved students that weren't supposed to succeed, but they made the dean's list and they got to pick a teacher that they thought changed their life, and I got 3 of those awards because you get instant feedback from the kids. Now I'm doing subbing because I retired, but I walk into a school and I have a ton of kids just come up and hug me. I concentrated a lot on the behavioral problems and the ones with low self-esteem, and I built up their self-esteem so that they could succeed, because I figured the teachers' pets would always be teachers' pets, and these guys would be left behind. So when they entered my room, they knew that if they were a behavior problem before, they always started at 0 and what they did made for what, you know. When they come back and say what I did for them, when they're like, you know, some of them are even in college and stuff like that, and they come back and say, you know, you changed my thing, or you brought me out of my shell. And those are really big rewards, because they've had 20, 25 teachers since then.
I had won several tournaments on boys jumping, and I was the youngest kite flyer in the world.
But then he also started teaching me to get the beats, because I never could do any of the beats and all that stuff. And then I think it was St. Olaf, where he put me on stage, and I all of a sudden was able to follow the drummer with the beats.